This is a video on Chapter 4, Lesson 1 of your 4th grade social studies book, The French and the British in Ohio. Read aloud. By the mid-1700s, Native Americans, British, and French each claimed land between the Ohio River and Lake Erie. In 1750, Maryland colonist Christopher Gist traveled through the area. A Native American asked if Gist knew that the French claimed all the land on one side of the River Ohio and the English on the other side. What had happened to the Native Americans' land? The big picture. European interest in North America goes back to Christopher Columbus's voyage of 1492. Asian goods such as silk and spices were worth a lot of money in Europe. Columbus was one of many explorers searching for a new route to Asia. Instead of Asia, Columbus reached the North American continent. Then French, British, and Spanish explorers turned their attention on North America. You read in the last lesson that the arrival of the Europeans gradually pushed the historic Indians into the Ohio area. Before long, people from France and Great Britain turned their attention to the Ohio country, too. The Ohio country includes the land that later became our state. It also includes parts of what are now Indiana, West Virginia, and Pennsylvania. The first French claim in North America came in 1535. Jacques Cartier explored the mouth of the St. Lawrence River. He claimed the land along the river for the French king. By the late 1600s, the French had built many settlements in eastern Canada. They also set about exploring areas farther west. They claimed every region they passed through for their king. Their lands in North America were called New France. So the French settled in New France. Jacques Cartier in 1535 was the first explorer for French to make a claim for France, and this claim was made in Canada. LaSalle finds the Ohio River. Now, LaSalle High School is named after LaSalle. Among the lands that interested the French was the Ohio country. René Robert Cavelier, Sieur de LaSalle, or LaSalle for short, ran a trading post in New France. Native American customers told him about a great river to the south. LaSalle set out from Canada in 1669 to find that river. Look at the map below to see the route LaSalle traveled. He named the river La Belle Rivière, a French phrase meaning beautiful river. He claimed the whole river basin, all the land drained by the Ohio River for France. LaSalle's report of the area brought many trappers and traders to the Ohio country. So LaSalle claimed the whole Ohio River basin for France. All right? And he brought attention for explorers to start exploring the Ohio country. Here is a picture of LaSalle. The British claim. Great Britain was not idle while the French were settling New France. That means they just didn't sit still and let the French do all the settling. So from 1607 to 1733, the British established 13 colonies in the east along the Atlantic Ocean. A colony is a place ruled by a distant country. Although most of the colonists stayed near the east coast, some crossed the Appalachian Mountains. They came to take part in fur trade. Some also came to farm the land. A warning to the British. So first, the British claimed the 13 colonies on the east coast near the Atlantic Ocean. And those 13 colonies became the original 13 states. A warning to the British. The presence of British traders worried the French. They sent Céloron de Blainville to the Ohio country in 1749. Céloron's job was to make clear France's claim and to get the British to leave. Céloron had a great ceremony at the mouth of each major river. Then he buried a lead plate that said the Ohio country belonged to France. The warning ignored. Céloron could not stop the British. They believed the Ohio country belonged to them. After all, when the colonies were first settled, the British king had claimed all of the land from sea to sea. In 1750, Christopher Gist arrived in the Ohio country. A group of British businessmen, or business people, wanted Gist to survey, or measure the land. So we know survey means measure the land. They planned to sell land in the Ohio country to colonists. Gist visited many Native American villages. This included Pickawillany, a Miami village in western Ohio. At Pickawillany, the Miami traded with both the French and the British. At another trading post, Gist met George Croghan. Croghan ran the largest British trading business in Ohio. So we have a lot of names here. Let's look at our names. So we have George Croghan, and he ran the largest British trading post or business in Ohio. We also have Christopher Gist, and he was representing the British. He arrived in the Ohio country, and he was in favor of saying that Ohio belonged to the British because the king had claimed it from sea to sea. Then we have an area of land called the Pickawillany, and this was a Miami village in western Ohio. Miami meaning the Miami Indians, and Miami University is named after those Native Americans. If we look in the picture below, we can see a picture of George Croghan, and you can see that he is shown with his survey tools that he used to measure the land in Ohio. We also need to look back under the warning to the British. We have another person there, Céloron de Blainville, and Céloron was for France. Céloron is a French name, and he was reinforcing the idea that the Ohio country belonged to France. Let's read on. The road to war. The French decided they'd had enough. In 1752, they attacked Pickawillany. French soldiers rounded up all the British traders there and forced them to leave. Then the French began building a chain of forts along the eastern border of the Ohio country. They hoped to keep more British from moving west into Ohio. The forts alone could not keep the British out of Ohio. In 1753, Robert Dinwiddie, British governor of Virginia, wrote to a French military leader in Ohio. Dinwiddie declared, "Sir, the country located on the Ohio River is obviously the property of the British king. That I am both surprised and hurt on hearing that a band of French troops is building fortresses on the river." The French military leader politely replied, "Whatever your instructions may be, I have mine, which are to remain here by orders of my general." The reply angered Dinwiddie. In 1754, he ordered troops toward Pittsburgh to protect a small British trading post there. Their leader was 22-year-old Virginian named George Washington. The French took over the post before Washington's troops arrived. They built Fort Duquesne on the site. Duquesne University is named after this fort. Located at the source of the Ohio River, Fort Duquesne was important to the control of the Ohio country. So at this time, George Washington was 22 years old, and he was a leader. Let's read on. Oh, let's look at the caption. George Washington became the first president of our country. The sword below belonged to him. In his journal on the left, Washington recorded the letter Dinwiddie sent to the French in Ohio. The French and Indian War. At Fort Duquesne, Washington's troops fought a brief battle with French soldiers. Washington retreated, expecting the French to attack again. He told his men to quickly build a fort. Because the fort was necessary for protection, Washington named it Fort Necessity. Find the fort on the map on page 91. We see it right here. Unfortunately, the fort was built too quickly. The finished product was not strong enough to hold off the French and their Indian allies. An ally is a person or country that joins with another for a common purpose. The Americans have had many different allies in many different wars. So allies are your friends in a war, or your teammates. They're usually other countries who join together with you. Native Americans believed that they could hold on to their Ohio lands if they kept the British out. That is because the British wanted to settle on the land, forcing Native Americans out. The French were mainly interested in building trade in the Ohio country. Together, Native Americans and the French defeated Washington and his troops. The French and Indian War had begun. While the French and British fought in North America, they also fought in Europe. The war there, remembered as the 7 Years' War, was the war in Europe. Also in Canada. The British gained control. In 1958, the British once again led the force to Fort Duquesne. They had recently something against the French on Lake Ontario. Since the French defeat kept supplies from reaching Fort Duquesne, the French abandoned the fort and burned it to the ground. The British won control of the area without firing a shot. Then they built a new fort on the spot and called it Fort Pitt. Within a year, many other important French forts had fallen to the British, including Quebec and Canada. Quebec was the center of government for New France. When it fell, the French lost all hope for victory. After years of fighting, French and British leaders met in 1763 to sign a peace treaty to end the war. A treaty is an agreement between two countries. In the Treaty of Paris, the French agreed to give all their land in the north to the British. This included all of Canada as well as their land east of the Mississippi River. The British finally controlled the Ohio country. Pontiac's War. Although the French and Indian War was over, Native Americans weren't ready to accept British control of the Ohio country. In 1763, an Ottawa leader named Pontiac began a war against the British. Pontiac persuaded some of the Mingo, Miami, Delaware, and Shawnee to join him. His words to them show his anger. It is important for us, my brothers, that we exterminate or wipe out from our lands this nation, Great Britain, which seeks only to destroy us. With his forces strengthened, Pontiac attacked British forts in the Ohio country. The British sent Henry Bouquet and his soldiers to protect the forts. Finally, the Native Americans gave up. So Henry Bouquet is from the British, and he was sent to protect the forts. Bouquet forced Native Americans to return European captives they had taken. Let's read on. A new proclamation. The British government wanted to keep peace with the Native Americans. They wanted to protect their fur trade. Peace would also cut down the cost of running the army. British leaders thought they could keep peace by keeping colonists from moving to the Ohio frontier. A frontier is the term Europeans used to describe the area near the edge of their settlements. So in 1763, the British made a proclamation or law. And the frontier is the area near the edge of their settlement, so it's the new area being settled. American colonists were no longer allowed to move west of the mountains. The colonists weren't happy when the government told them they couldn't move. Many of them moved anyway. The people were known as squatters. So those were the colonists who moved anyway. They settled on the land without permission and without paying for it. Soon thousands of squatters lived on the Ohio frontier. The Native Americans had pushed off their lands before. They saw the danger as more and more squatters moved in. Angry Native Americans made raids against the squatters. The squatters often fought back. A trust betrayed. Among all the tales of horror from this period of time, one stands out. It involved a Mingo leader named Tagahoot, who was also called Logan. Logan and the colonists got along well. So the Mingo leader was named Tagahoot or Logan, and he got along with the colonists. This changed in 1774 when some settlers murdered a group of unarmed Native Americans. Among the group were members of Logan's family. Afterwards, Logan explained that he felt the British and the colonists had betrayed or turned against him. He spoke of this in a statement now called Logan's Lament. A lament is a cry or sorrow. What do you think Logan meant when he said, "Who is there to mourn for Logan? Not one." I appeal to any white man to say, if ever he entered Logan's cabin hungry and I gave him not meat, if ever he came cold or naked and I gave him not clothing. During the course of the last long and bloody war, Logan remained in his tent an advocate for peace. Nay, say, was my love for the whites. I had even thought to live with you, but for the injuries of one man, Colonel Cresap, the last spring, in cold blood and unprovoked, cut off, murdered all the relatives of Logan, not sparing even my women and children. There runs not a drop of my blood in the veins of any human creature. This called on me for revenge. I have sought it. I have killed many, who in there to mourn for Logan, not one. So Logan is very upset. Why it matters. Although the British won control of the Ohio country from the French, land conflicts continued between Native Americans and British settlers. Other conflicts arose between Great Britain and its American colonies that would bring them to war. Once again, the Native Americans would be caught in the middle of a fight.